Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm currently 19 weeks pregnant with my second baby, and since I have everything baby and prenatal really fresh in my brain right now, I thought I would make this video on how I was able to find really great doctors. This felt like a super trivial topic for me until I've heard from close friends about their experiences with their doctors and their hospitals and nurses, and I thought these tips might help you find a really great clinic and a really great doctor that you connect with and that you trust. The first thing you're going to want to do is decide what your priorities are, which things are important to you in a doctor. And once you've done that, then you go into your HMO list of providers and you will find your options there. But the whole point of this is to help you decide what the priorities are. So I will tell you what mine were and some of the things that were important to me, and you can go from there and decide what's important to you. The first thing I'm going to start with is if it's important to you that your doctor be a man or a woman. Everyone will have a different opinion about this. I have chosen that both of my doctors were men. For personal reasons, I've had a woman doctor and wasn't a great experience, and I decided to go with that. In my experience, women tend to be a little less compassionate about pain and your symptoms. I imagine it's because women feel that they understand what you're feeling because they're also women. So I have found that men tend to be way more compassionate and understanding about things that are uncomfortable to me or pain, just because they have no idea what to relate that to. So they just, in my experience, they just leave everything up to you and they let you decide what is important to you. And at the same time, you might have had a great experience with women gynecologists, and you might just want to do that because it's more comfortable in many other ways. So it's really up to you, but that is a good starting point. Many women don't feel comfortable seeing a man doctor because of the exams, and it's uncomfortable in many situations. But the actual exams you're gonna have to do are very few, and in my clinic they allow you to do a lot of the stuff yourself if you're swabbing for something. So there's a lot of room for maneuvering there. And if you're by yourself, which in my case I always take my husband with me to my appointments, he's always there. It just makes me feel more comfortable. But if you're alone, they're gonna call a nurse in, and you don't have to be worried that anything weird is gonna happen. Next, I would like to differentiate between a more guided approach and a more full control approach, which I like to sort of mix and match. And what I mean by that is that I've heard from family and friends that there are doctors who want to nudge you in this particular direction, or that don't like when you express views of certain things and they want you to do certain things. But I like to be able to be deferred to with every decision, just because it's all up to me. I'm the one carrying this baby. I'm the one who's going to have to deliver it and everything else. So I really like that a doctor gives me their honest opinion, but I want to ultimately decide what will happen. So it's really important that you know that there are doctors out there who will defer to you, and you don't have to stick with a doctor that is making you feel uncomfortable in any way or making you feel that you have to do certain things. I also really appreciate when a doctor gives me their opinion based on research and studies and fact, and occasionally their experiences with their other patients, just because I want to rely on statistics to make my decisions. For example, if you're taking some medication that you believe might not be great in your pregnancy, I want to know, like if I'm going there and I'm taking a BC medication, I want to know what the studies say and not just what they think is, I think it's fine, I think it's this or that. In my experience, I was taking some medication and they shared with me that there have not been any issues related to this medicine directly. There could still be risks, but they have not been found. And I've also had this experience with my other patients, so I believe this. But it's all up to you. And also I want them to be able to weigh the benefits and the costs of taking or not taking that particular medication. And I want that to be based on fact. I feel that a lot of doctors who have been doctors for a really long time, they might not lean in this direction very much just because they've had so much experience. but I really want a doctor that will do that for me, that will bring me more peace, and I will feel that I'm making the best decisions I can possibly make. What's also really important to me is that they are honest but not overly judgmental. For example, in my first pregnancy, I gained quite a bit of weight. I had multiple issues that contributed to that, but that's not part of this video. But he did not make me feel worse about it because he knew I was already doing everything that I could, and if I could do any better, I would have done it because I was not happy about gaining all that weight. So I want them to be mindful about it and to tell me about issues and to be honest, but not overly judgmental. And to not assume that I'm just not doing my best. No one wants to be gaining a ton of weight and to have a difficult pregnancy because of it. Additionally, I really like my clinic and all the nurses and the staff there. And I love that my current doctor will always knock on the door before he walks in and ask if he can come in. I know this seems trivial, but it's important, and every single time he'll do that to all of his patients. And I just feel really respected and that they're not judging me. They're just there to take care of me and do the best that they can. Another concern I had is that I wanted a doctor who was just as concerned with my mental health as he was with my physical health. Pregnancy can be a really tough time for anyone mentally as well as physically. So I want them to be aware of that and to check in and make sure that I'm doing all right, because especially if it's your first pregnancy, you might not know if this is normal, if how you're feeling is okay, and you might have a difficult time in your postnatal experience. So I just want that to be a priority. I want them to ask about it, and you can ask about that during your first appointment. Lastly, this is something that I've changed since my first pregnancy. I wanted to see a doctor who prioritized seeing their patients a little earlier. Many doctors wait until you're 10 weeks pregnant to see you for the first time, which for me seemed like a really crazy thing, being pregnant the first time when you find out when you're about 4 weeks and you don't know what to do, you don't know if you're doing anything wrong, if you're doing everything right. It could be such a relief to see a doctor, to get an ultrasound, and to feel that somebody is there and is aware of you. So this time I went to see a doctor who preferred to see his patients at 8 weeks rather than 10 weeks. And the reason this was so important is because during my first pregnancy, on my 8th week, I had to go to the ER because of heavier bleeding. And I was terrified. I, didn't want to go. Nobody wants to spend that money on ER. And I was terrified something horrible was going to happen. So it was very terrible, but it turned out to be completely fine. It was nothing crazy. It was just a UTI that had progressed to that point. It was a pretty easy fix, but I wish I could have prevented that because everything was totally fine. So I wanted to see a doctor earlier this time to prevent that from happening. And this time, because I already knew the clinic and I was already used to how things work there, even before my appointment, I went in to get tested for a UTI just to prevent that from happening. And I ended up getting antibiotics before I even got seen for the first time, and it went much better this time. So I would say, if this is a concern for you, if you're the sort of person that gets anxiety like I gets really bad anxiety about stuff, I would recommend that you try to find one that will see you a little bit earlier. I would also say, don't be afraid to ask when you call the clinic, because they're used to having first-time moms calling all the time and being anxious and worried about stuff. So it might feel like you're bothering them, but really it doesn't matter to me, because I just want to make sure that I'm taken care of, my baby's taken care of. So, and if they make you feel bad that way, I would recommend, try something else, because they should be used to first-time moms being worried about things. And most clinics should be able to accommodate you to be seen earlier, especially if you've had some sort of issue before and you have more than, normal reasons to be concerned. Now that you've decided what your priorities are, it's time to get into your HMO directory and start looking for doctors and facilities in your area that you might want to look into. Obviously, the better the plan you're going to have, the better the options you're going to have. But don't get discouraged if there aren't a lot of options, because you can still find really great doctors. And to be honest, at least in my area, most clinics will take basically every insurance. So I wouldn't be discouraged and go with the first one that you find. At least in the insurances that I've had, they have some reviews on there, and you can start looking at certain doctors. And once you have a few names, you can go and research their names individually. Go on Google or anywhere else that you can find stuff about them, and you start to get a little bit of an idea of what they're like. I also know that some clinics will have social media, and you can go and look in there and see what you find about specific doctors, and you might be amazed at the information you can find about doctors online. But I also wouldn't get too hung up on only reviews, because we all know that reviews can be highly biased. So it's just to be a starting point for you to start looking. Once you've done enough research about individual doctors, you'll start to get an idea of which ones you're leaning towards based on what people said and their experiences. So you'll have a list, and you can start calling the clinics. You'll be needing to call the clinics to check their availability, if they're taking new patients, if your insurance is still accepted, if they will see you as early as you would like, what is their hospital affiliation, because doctors will usually be allowed to deliver a baby in a specific hospital, and you want to make sure that your insurance also covers that hospital. This sounds crazy, but I've had this experience where my doctor was covered, but the hospital where he practiced wasn't covered. So that was a problem, big problem, big bill. But so you wanna make sure that that's taken care of. So anyway, these are my ideas and some tips on how to find a really good doctor, an obstetrician or prenatal doctor that you were happy with and that you can trust and have a great experience with. I've had 2 doctors in the same clinic. The first one, I didn't go with him the second time because he retired. I didn't know that this was a thing that happened with OBGYNs before, but at a certain point, they stopped delivering babies and they just do gynecology work. And that just, their life's slowing down a little bit. They don't have to be on call so much. So he was not able to deliver my baby anymore, but it would have gone with him if he was still doing that. But then I decided to go to a different doctor in that same clinic, and he is also amazing. So I want to encourage you to not get discouraged and really try and find a doctor that you connect with. Don't just stick with the first one that you find. If for some reason you felt uncomfortable or you didn't like something that happened in that first visit, go and try for another one. There are really great doctors out there, and you shouldn't settle for a bad experience. I hope this video was helpful for you, and if it was, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time.